Cool. Welcome all to another Inference Gateway meeting or Gateway Inference Extension meeting. Just a reminder, we are a CNCF project, and so we do follow their guidelines, which quick summary is be polite, be kind, be respectful. Pretty easy. This is uploaded to YouTube, so we'll find you if you don't follow it. Um, with that out of the way, we'll take a look at any AIs which we don't have from last week. So cool, we can jump right in. Shiue, why don't you take it away?
Yeah. So like so I like raised this like a question in like last week. So I like introduce the V1 inference pool CRD, but at the same time we want to get rid of some duplicate Golang types in V1 Alpha 2. So with the current code generator and with the removal of like a duplication Golang types, I will have to delete the V1 alpha to like inference pool CRD. So I'm wondering whether everyone is okay with that. Yeah, somehow I closed the PR accidentally, so I will reopen it.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this. It is basically this combination allows gateway implementations, if they want to offer support for both V1 and V1 Alpha 2. But I'm assuming many or most will just support V1 and not bother with V1 Alpha 2. I think removing the CRD is a signal that V1 Alpha 2 is effectively gone, and for any future use of this API you should just use V1. So as long as there's no objections to that, that seems fine to me.
I see a hand from Near and then Damian.
Yeah. So there are two points I wanted to mention. So first, I think we should verify that the different gateways can work with V1 before removing V1 Alpha 2. I mean, if we break the contract between the gateway and the gateway API and the extension, it might be problematic. So I would keep whatever is needed until we get some validation that it works with V1, and that is correct not only for Istio-K gateway and GKE, but I think we should aim also for the other implementations that are currently documented in our website. This is the first point. The second point, it's not like a point, it's more a question. Do we have I know it's a lot of work. I know there are a lot of details and bits that has to be updated, but do we have some time estimation for when this transition is going to be completed? Because it basically affects everyone.
Yeah, this is, it feels like pulling a Band-Aid off, basically, right? It's going to be a painful transition. One of the fun things with CRDs is they never go away, right? Basically, if you are a gateway implementation and you support a gateway 0.5 or inference extension 0.5, that CRD at 0.5 will forever exist, and you can forever install it on any cluster. This is a bit different than upstream Kubernetes APIs, where if we remove an API version, it's gone. This isn't gone. It just means you have to refer back to a previous release to install something, which seems okay to me. I do definitely want to encourage and help, any all implementations move to V1, but I would rather, if you're a relatively new implementation, it's not going to be very disruptive. I think just going directly to V1 is going to be minimize disruption for everyone. But yeah, open to, maybe I misunderstood the comment.
No, you're correct. I mean, my intention was if we're looking on the GA plan and we do need to have 3 conformance gateways passing, right? So we aim to do it with K-gateway, Istio, and GKE, unless I missed something. But having said that, we also have other implementations like Envoy AI Gateway, which added to their CI a test, end-to-end test that checks the conformance with the inference extension. And now with this change, their test is broken. And I think we do want to get this fixed or help them with this transition if we can. It's not a blocker, but we do want to help, I think.
Absolutely. I completely agree. We kind of need to counterbalance our own velocity with uh, that help, though. I do, obviously, I want to see as many gateways able to use this as we can, but we do, like Rob said, this is a band-aid. I think we have to pull off at some point. We do want to V1, at least inference pool, to signal that we want to use this for production workloads. And we want to see people use that for production workloads. I think, Danian, did you just put your hand down or did you just?
Yeah, just because I was ready to jump in. So yeah, I guess where are we at with the inference pool API review? Because last time that I saw, what is the that's 1150. What is it? 1170. Is it 1173? I thought there's still discussion going on. So I guess what I'm getting at is like, do we do this before we get kind of all the approvals? Because it does seem like there's some things that have come up that we start to question. Okay, do we need to make any changes to the API? So are we essentially putting the cart before the horse?
I actually missed that there were comments there, so thanks for the heads up. Okay. I see. Okay, it looks like there's nothing too large here. But yeah, good question. I'll get back to you on that. Yeah, sorry, I hadn't been paying as close attention as I intended on this.
And you see, like my latest comment links into the agenda topic that I added here. Is currently.
Yes, I'm definitely trying to get a resolution on that one ASAP because that is really unfortunate.
Yeah, so I would like to be able to get an answer to that, right? Because right now, failure mode in inference pool is unimplementable.
Yeah. I will plus one and say that is a blocker for any GA, right? We need to have a resolution there. My very strongly preferred resolution is that there's an Envoy patch that reverts the change. But if that doesn't happen, then we'll have to be creative on our side. But I think very likely there's an Envoy patch that can fix this.
Okay. Yeah. So that's my feedback is like, I would just hate, like, I know we need to rip the Band-Aid off. We need to, we're all aggressively working towards V1. And Shmuel, back to your question is I'm gonna start looking into the K gateway side on what's needed for V1. Start working through that. So I should have some more answers, and I'll tag you on that. But at the same time, I would, I'd hate that something happens and we got to go back and say, oh, let's put V1 Alpha 2 back in there, and it just seems like we're just slightly early.
Yeah, you're right. You're right there. If it is, let's see, if it's things like rearranging structs that don't, or adjusting spec to fix typos, I think we're okay here. But if it's something like larger, then yeah, we need to, it would be like an entirely new version rev. That would be, a much bigger deal. I think either way, we're probably not going back to V1 Alpha 2. We're either going to like V1 Alpha 3 or V1. I hope it's V1, but yeah, let me take a closer look to make sure.
But to your point, even if we Alpha 3 it, it's going to be easier for us to go if we have V1 Alpha 2 there, right? And then cut a V1 Alpha 3 as opposed to getting rid of it and then having to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, this basically leaves all the API types in place, and it just removes the CRD. So it's, you know, it's really just a flip in, do I generate this or not, right? And we can, yeah.
Shmuel had their hand up for a while.
Right now, the only gateway that works with main, I think Google's, right? You guys Google, you have a gateway that can work with Inference V1, right?
We do, but it's not out in the open. It's like just our internal dev environment that supports V1 at this point.
Yeah, and to clarify too, sorry to jump in without raising my hand, but K Gateway does with our agent gateway data plane as opposed to the Envoy data plane. And so you're going to be seeing, we're working through if it's just going to be one conformance report with like 2 sections explaining the 2 different data planes. But it's, you know, I'm focused on the Envoy based data plane, and that is the issue that we're having that you see with the agenda topic that I posted.
As I was saying, right now, you know, we can't do almost none of us can do real end-to-end testing on main, on the tip of main. Okay, because we have no gateways.
You can
I can manually,
I think as Danian mentioned, you might want to try out Agent Gateway with K Gateway to pair it with V1. Yeah, I think that's the first one out in the open.
Yeah, and I think even as I think through it, I'll circle with John Howard, who's leading the Agent Gateway work. I think he's working off of 051 and not main. I'm pretty confident about that. So, but I could circle back with him, and I don't think it'd be much effort to go to main. So let me circle around on that topic after the call and find out some more details.
What would be the ideal? It sounds like there's some disappointment with how it's currently being handled. My understanding is that we have to cut main before the gateways can implement V1. So there is some transition state that is painful, agreed. But if there's alternatives to how we handle this, totally open to it.
Yeah, let me just. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think gateways can point to a point in time snapshots. I don't think that's a big issue. I grant that they would probably presumably prefer to point to a release and not some point in time snapshot, you know, point in time in Git. But you know, at least you get an alpha out, a beta out, you know, on a point in time, you know, some point in Git, that would be perfectly fine. Okay, I mean, even Istio, what works now is basically beta, you know, 1.27 beta 0 works almost. Right, there's some more changes in main that I think they have to cherry pick. Right, in fact, they're changing how they enable working with GIE. So I assume that's going to get cherry picked, but I need to chat with them, find out. Okay, and I know for a fact that Istio is sensitive to the kind, at least to the kind of the inference pool. That's for sure.
Cool. I think Nir and then Danian and then Rob.
Yeah, just a quick question. Do we know if anyone has reached out to someone from Istio? I don't know, Lior or Keith or anyone from their team, just or even just to open an issue? So they are aware of this change and work on it. Do we know if this is in progress?
I was meaning to do so. I haven't done so. I will do so.
Okay, thanks. Well,
You're welcome.
Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Shmuel stole the words out of my mouth. So yeah, I mean, it's preferred to work with a release as opposed to a commit off main. From my standpoint now, that's more manageable to work off a commit off main. And that's what I'm going to do here to test out V1. But something that we as a project need to be aware of is like, it works for me because I still have some runway before K Gateway releases. But that becomes far more challenging based on the release schedules of other implementations. So, something that we need to consider and figure out maybe how do we coordinate and track. So we do give a release that implementations can work with before they release. Otherwise, it turns into a real difficult situation for implementers.
Yeah, big plus one. I would say one of the things that, I mean, this is decidedly more difficult than Gateway API itself. Gateway API, we have, I'll say what's kind of worked with Gateway API, and that is to signal when we're releasing several months in advance so that implementations can, plan, adjust their release schedule, or just, say this is not part of this release and I can't fit it in, whatever that is. And then the second thing we've done is we release and then we wait a month before making any announcement. And that month is basically time for gateways to catch up and say, hey, I support this, get their conformance reports in, whatever. And then we do a blog post that features all the implementations that are conformant with the new release. So the release of the API is not the big deal. It's the release, that the announcement a month later that this is available and you can use it in all these different places. That may be a useful idea here, but I think the distinction that we're dealing with in this project is there is corresponding significant development on endpoint picker, and to like regularly test endpoint picker, you need, it is certainly convenient if you have a gateway that you can pair it with. And so that is, I think, probably one of the root pain points here, if I'm understanding correctly. I really, really hope that once we get past this painful migration to V1, that's it. There's no more pain, but so I really hope this is a one-time pain, but yeah, we'll see.
I'll chime in and be the how should we say, the non-believer. Okay, I was even in favor of pushing that EPP support both versions, and that way we would survive the endeavor. But
wait, sorry, EPP support for what?
V1
I misunderstood.
V1 inference pool as well as V1 alpha 2 inference pool, both at the same time.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Not an either or, but both.
How much work would that? It might not be that bad. Yeah.
Because that solves the problem.
Yeah, you'd probably need to. It might complain if you don't have one or the other installed, so you need to make them conditionally enabled, the different controllers. But that would, yeah, I definitely agree that would alleviate.
Because we have another problem, right? We can't go production until we have 3 conforming gateways, right?
And so basically you need conformant gateways that conform to the API, but like if you do a version bump, you kind of get into this like, you know, chicken and egg problem, right? Of like,
No.
you know, I don't think we can wait for implementations to support the new version to release it, because then, you know, I don't really know. But as long as the API itself is the same, I think that meets the requirements.
Cool. Unless there's any other open threads here, I think we can move right along. Rob, with the multi-cluster inference gateway.
Cool. You mind if I present? Is that okay?
Yeah, let me give you co-host 1 second.
Very kind of you. Yeah, so it's been I've taken some time to as I mentioned in the last meeting, I was gonna present this to the SIG multi-cluster. Did that on Tuesday, got some good useful feedback from it. And I've iterated on the doc since then. Hopefully this is starting to fill out and become a bit clearer of how it could work. You know, in the process of fleshing it out, I also raise questions that I would like to take today, but I realize I'm not the only thing left on the agenda, so I should probably get some kind of time box. Kellen, how long do you think we have for this?
Yeah, let me pull up the notes. Let's give you some config API. Let's give you 15. I think we kind of talked about Danians, but yeah.
Yeah, that works. Okay, so I kind of sketched out some diagrams of roughly how, you know, models that I think could roughly work for multi-cluster inference. There is one model that basically introduces this inference pool import API that I had described in earlier versions, just without a diagram. This particular example shows a world where you have a gateway in one cluster and, you know, inference pools in other clusters. I spelled out a little bit more what the configuration on inference pool would look like. Seems like in the comments there's been some fairly significant agreement around the idea that, hey, we should just start with an annotation. Let's not go too crazy here. I usually hate annotations, but for something like new like this, sure. You know, it allows us to move quickly. We can add a field when we get a little bit more confident in the direction. And then inference pool import, this is largely the same thing, but one of the things that I shifted here is initially I said you really need to track both endpoint pickers and model server endpoints, right? But if you look at how inference gateway or the inference extension works, you may not actually need to care about the endpoints in each cluster. Like maybe all you need is the endpoint picker address, right? And the endpoint picker will tell you where to go from there. So it's possible that this could be significantly simpler than multi-cluster services or anything else if all you care about is an endpoint per cluster. And maybe that's also where you get the signal or feedback back of like, here's how loaded my local inference pool is. And you can use this to make an informed decision of where to route your traffic, right? Whether it's cluster A or cluster C. Nir?
Yeah. So two questions. First, do you think it might be useful if we just like schedule a dedicated meeting for this topic with some of the multi-cluster leads and some of the people
Sure.
here, whoever is interested, of course, it's not mandatory, but maybe we can gather together, you know, just walk through the details and see if we can get some agreement on these things. This is, I think, first point. The second point is, have you considered something like a single entry point through cluster B, or do you think of something like a federated inference? I mean, request can go through cluster B, but each cluster can also be autonomous in a way that it can accept requests directly to cluster A or cluster C in this case.
Yeah. So are you basically describing, you know, a gateway over here and a gateway, you know, over here that also, you know, can route to any other cluster? Basically, they're also doing the multi-cluster routing. Is that what you mean?
I mean, ideally, you would like to have like a single entry point, right? Where the requests are sent to, and then internally we have some routing decision that based on that decision, the request goes to the right endpoint, and whoever sends the request, he doesn't need to be aware whether it's going to be cluster A or cluster C. I mean,
Yeah.
where the request is going to be handled. So this is one mode. The other mode is, let's assume we are aware of the different clusters here. So maybe they are in different locations and we want to allow like autonomous management of the separate clusters to allow accessing a specific cluster. You know, I don't know, cluster A is in East Coast and cluster C is in West Coast, and I want to send specifically to cluster A. So not going through the single entry point, but allowing the two modes. Have you considered this case, or is it like too complicated?
No, it's not. It's not too complicated at all. So the way we've solved that, I've done, you know, demos showcased how this works with a multi-cluster service or multi-cluster gateway, you know, basically, and what we recommend there is you have overlapping services. So you have like basically a service that it covers all clusters, and then you have another quote unquote multi-cluster service that only covers endpoints in cluster A. And the only thing that makes it multi-cluster is that it's available everywhere. That's a really good user story, and I should cover that somewhere, because I'm realizing it gets a little messier when you have endpoint picker in the mix, and you probably don't want to have like inference pools that are subsets of other inference pools. Yeah, let me try and think that one through. But I think that's a very good use case.
Yeah, so sorry, Shmuel, I'll just add one more sentence. So basically, the reason I ask this is because we worked in the past, like 5 years ago, on a project, a CNCF project, if you know, open cluster management for multi-cluster management, and we worked on some capability to extend. So basically, the use case was a bit different, but it looks like the overall architecture looks similar. The use case was that you have a global hub that manages multiple clusters, and then there is some scale limit, and you want to scale it by using additional hubs. So we started something called Hub of Hubs. So this is just a layered approach where you use like manager of managers, and then you can use one entry point to manage everything from one hand, but from the other hand, we also allowed like autonomous management of each of these regional hubs separately. So it kind of reminds me this use case where you have like a single entry point for if you don't want to decide, you want to let like the routing, the smart decision, you want to let the system decide for you. Or in other cases, you can have like you know what is the decision. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm
So,
not sure how I missed that use case. Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
Rob, isn't the communication from cluster B to clusters A and C just the regular gRPC messages that the endpoint picker gets and knows how to respond to?
In a world where you have a flat network, yes. In a world where you have something in between, you may have some kind of intermediate gateway or something as an implementation detail that hopefully can be mostly hidden from users or but yeah, it should be from the perspective of an endpoint picker, it should be the same thing.
Right. I mean, it's just this, right. So if that's the case, then putting another gateway, an HTTP route on top of cluster A and cluster C is nothing. I mean, just another thing talking to the endpoint picker and it won't know what happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which could happen in an HA kind of a situation, anyways.
Yeah. I think this. I tried to keep this example relatively simple, but yes, it's entirely plausible that you'd have a gateway sitting over here. Yeah. Cool.
I think mine. Yeah, that's right.
Sure. Yeah. My question was just around like that topology use case. So like I have seen the like separate service kind of subset type approach where you want to like manually configure it. I think one of the risks of that is that you start going down the path towards potential like not sameness of the service where it is logically something different in C than it is in A. And that's where I guess one of my questions is bringing that back up to the top level is it desirable instead to have smarter selection like based on topology metadata or something like that at the like cluster B routing?
Yeah, probably. I don't even know where that would fit yet, but I think this is absolutely a real user story, right? Of like, hey, I don't care. I want this specific request or request matching these characteristics to go here. And that in an ideal world doesn't require you to create a separate inference pool or a separate inference pool import. It's something that you're able to describe.
Yeah.
Probably via routing rules.
That feels right to me in terms of like I want to prefer routing to closer things versus like a round robin spread or something like that. It feels like a thing that should be expressible by routing rules and metadata, not necessarily manually configuring the infrastructure and shuffling that around.
Cool. I think we had Damien and then Nir.
Yeah, I just wanted to call out, with multi-cluster, I think having the detailing kind of how to secure that connection between the clusters, it just made me think of, I'll throw it in the chat window here real quick, is this issue that talks about creating an operations guide and making sure that we secure that connection. There's just some details that implementations that need to be aware of.
Yeah, +1. Added a note here. Yeah, I think our implicit insecure TLS is probably not the best. Yeah. Okay.
Really quick
Let
too.
me.
Sorry, Rob. Really quick. I mean, this comment, and you see what I referenced too is like how we communicate that information from the EPP to the gateway, right? Most of that is through an inference pool, and this kind of gets back to GA inference pool as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Yeah, I know I've got like 2 minutes left, so I'll just try and highlight a couple other things. You know, I think the simple, quote unquote simple, nothing is simple, but the least complicated way to implement multi-cluster inference here is where the gateway is only aware of endpoint picker endpoints and doesn't think about anything else. What that complicates is failure mode, where if you set fail open, then how do you fail open if you don't know where to go after the endpoint picker? One option is we just say that's extended, and not everyone's going to support that on multi-cluster. Maybe nobody does. Another impossible interpretation of failover is failover to another endpoint picker. I don't know. That could theoretically work. Or there's the more complicated option of keep track of all these endpoints as well at the gateway level and somehow propagate them across clusters and actually honor that fail open configuration the same way you would otherwise. I don't have a great, it's possible that any combination of these are valid, but I think this requires some more discussion. And then the other thing is, how you select a cluster. And this is whether it's metrics from model server endpoints, or probably the simpler case is endpoint picker gives you back some signal that you can make a decision on. The very last thing I'll cover, I know I'm at time, I threw an alternative in here, which is that we use MCS API, and like inference pool points at a multi-cluster service for endpoint picker, basically. And that it feels a little funky. I don't like it, but I wanted to at least include it for completeness. Feedback, welcome there. But I know I've overstayed my welcome, so I'll wrap it up here.
Yeah, Nir, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll try to be very quick. So basically, I think there is no way around having the information about the model servers. I don't think having information only on EPPs is good enough, in a sense that you could potentially collect the information about the EPPs, and you could, let's say, for example, that one of the EPPs, it has like, I don't know, 5 GPUs, and you get an incoming request that requires 3 GPUs, but the 5 GPUs are not all on the same endpoint. Like you have 5 endpoints, each of them with 1 GPU. So you can't get around it. You must know the details of each of the model servers, the endpoints. Not only that, I think with the new pluggable data layer, we could define more than just metrics. So we could collect more data that could be used for routing decisions or scheduling decisions. And in this case, we would need that information as well, not only the metrics.
Could you just, sorry, I know I'll be quick, but in that example of like, you need a large GPU and only one cluster has it, for example, right? Could that be something like you could express in feedback from endpoint picker of this is the max hardware I have available in my local pool or something like that? I don't know.
I'd hope so. Inference pool was designed to kind of hide the model servers behind it and kind of treat inference pool as your point of contact. So I hope so. I think that's something. If not, that's something we should definitely improve the ergonomics on. That we're with the SLO work that's being done. That is a step in that direction where it's kind of getting rid of exactly which backend has what and just using that SLO based performance. So anyways, that's roundabout, but I think that's possible, and I think that's definitely something we should work towards. That would be a proper implementation of Inference Gateway, in my opinion.
So I think this has been a very useful discussion. Thank you. And I've realized that exactly what Nir said, this deserves a meeting on its own to discuss further. So I'll drop something like in Slack to try and gather people that are interested. Look out for that. And I'll drop it also in SIG multi-cluster Slack as well, and see if we can get a group of people together that are interested.
Cool. Yeah, in the sake of time, we will move along. Nir.
Yes. So this, I'll try to be very quick to leave some time for the next topic. So basically, config API. So if you remember, we have like a section of plugins and then the section of the scheduling profiles. And basically, the plugins they're added all around. So if a plugin is implementing multiple extension points, we add it to all extension points that it implements, except for the scheduling part, which depends if the plugin is specified in the scheduling profile or not. So at this point, this is the pre-request and post-response, the ones that are always added, or at least we try to add them if the plugin implements the extension point. The suggestion I wanted to make is basically a use case I've seen in LLMD. So we have two plugins with some dependency between them. And the first plugin defines its parameters. And then the second plugin uses one of the parameters of the first one. So ideally, I would like to have additional section, like a section for parameters that we define like a key value pairs with argument or parameter key and parameter value. And then we can reference those in the plugins. And then in the other sections, like the scheduling profile, we can reference the plugins. So this is kind of another layer of referencing, but it allows a single point of variables in case the variables are common to more than one plugin. So this was an idea I thought just before this meeting. So I thought it would be good to raise it here and get some feedback. Shmuel.
Question, are you talking about individual parameters for a plugin or the whole set? Or to be sets that you can reference?
Individual. No, individual.
Well, that's a bigger change. Right now the parameters. Right now the parameter text is simply, you know, stuff passed to the plugin.
Yeah, I know. It's the raw message of the JSON, but I've seen in LLMD that we have the profile handler, the PD profile handler, which reference one of the prefix hash size or hash block size or one of the variables of the config there, but it uses only that specific one. So we don't want to pass the whole config. We just want to reference the same variable while making sure it has the same value, because if they both are using the same variable for the same purpose, but they have different configuration because now they are configured separately. So a human error may be caused here while configuring the system, which is not so great.
Well, let me ask a question. Do you expect this to be automatic, or do you expect the plugin to understand that it can get a variable?
No, I mean, I thought I could reference a variable like we reference a plugin. So a plugin can define its parameters like with a reference.
That does make me wonder if we should we can think about params a little bit, but yeah, maybe move to, you can specify, like you say, plugins, and then specify, yeah, I think I agree with what you're saying, the key value pair, and then they would both just look for that value, that config value. That seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, I'm thinking like something similar to environment variables. Like you can define environment variable once and then access them from different points in the code, different structs, different components, and then reuse the same key value pair. So I'd like to get the same feeling when I'm using the configuration file, without having to define, multiple times the same variable.
To set time on this, sorry, Shamil, can we spin up an issue with your explicit example and we can keep the conversation going there just so we have some confidence to work with?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Cool. Danian, we're going to give you the rest of the time if you need it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, should be relatively quick, I think. So, if you're interested, if you can click on this issue. So, what I found here very recently is we're in kind of this gray area with performance tests. So, Envoy v1.35 was just released. Within the K-Gateway community, we bumped to that version and broke conformance due to the fail open conformance test that is no longer supported in Envoy v1.35. So just wanted to kind of have an open discussion on where we go from here.
Yeah, so this regression came from Google. You're welcome. So I know it was trying to fix a legitimate problem, but we reached out to where this came from, and I think it's not a question of if this will be fixed. It's just a question of how quickly it can get fixed. I have not gotten a response on timeline yet, but I'm hoping it can be pretty quick.
Okay.
I think they're pretty motivated to fix it too. So.
Yeah, I had a feeling. So, I guess that timeline will really help understand where we go from here, right? If we feel like it is going to take a little bit longer, then how do we communicate that to the community? Do we temporarily disable the fail open test, all that kind of stuff, right? So I'm in the process of just submitting a conformance report, skipping that test, and then referencing that issue. And then I could always just circle back, update that conformance report as soon as we figure out what the fix is.
Yeah, Keith has a good question, which I was curious about. Can you hold off on the upgrade to Envoy 135 and like skip and go to 136 when that comes out? I don't know if there's other things you're
really I mean, I would just say, let's see when, let's figure out the fix, when that fix is going to get into Envoy, go from there. I mean, from a K-Gateway standpoint, we have a release scheduled for mid-August. We tried to kind of align things here. So like we could support with that release, we could support V1 of Inference Pool, all that kind of stuff, right? And we have other needs for 135, so that's not really an option, but 136 could be an option, or if this is considered a regression and a bug, if preferably if there's like a 1.35.1 release. So let's figure out those details. But I mean, from a K-Gateway point of view, and going back to my earlier point, is just the coordination between the implementations is really going to be important for us as a project, because otherwise, we could get into a situation where we release V1 and then we put it certain implementations into a real difficult spot of supporting, having a supported release, right? It's easy to be able, okay, let's go ahead. All right, this is in main, but we got to just try to coordinate across those releases. And I imagine maybe other implementations like K-Gateway are trying to kind of coordinate things here with the V1 of Inference extension. So it's kind of where we're at. And the timing is going to be key. So, I don't know if it's you, Rob, or whoever on side is tracking and really pushing the Envoy fix so we can get this moving forward. Now, one last point, at least again on K-Gateway side, we support 2 different data planes, and luckily our Rust-based data plane, Agent Gateway, doesn't have this issue. So, I mean, that's at least a good thing, but from K-Gateway standpoint, part of our messaging is that we have both of the data planes and that we support inference extension on both of the data planes and give customers choice.
It's somewhat of a side note, just bringing up the coordination again. Would it maybe make sense to schedule a one-off with maybe the maintainers of this project and then our points of contact? So Damien, you would kind of dual purpose since you're K-Gateway. Maybe we get Lior, Keith for Istio, and then I would need to find the point of contact for Envoy AI Gateway. Just kind of make sure we are coordinating, because I agree. I want to make sure that this works for everybody and that our V1 is smooth. If that sounds good, we can look into times and make that happen.
Yeah, no, I think it's good, and I just threw in a link in the chat window. So as we were having the meeting and earlier discussed this, I at least created this issue, linked it to our GA milestone. So I could just use other folks' help. If there's names on here that need to be on here, please go ahead and tag them. Let's, I think maybe just start with the conversation here. I'll add a comment to just add additional context on the K-Gateway side. But if others can just chime in, I'll also link this to the issue that we're discussing here with the V135 release of Envoy, essentially breaking fail open.
Perfect. Sorry, I'm commenting in here. Thank you for spinning that issue up. Keith, yeah, go ahead. Your hand's up.
Yeah, potentially dumb question. What was the status quo before that PR went through? Like, is a revert out of the question temporarily? Like, what's the?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
My understanding from talking with where this change came from basically is that the combination of fail open with what is it, streaming,
Full duplex streamed.
Full duplex streamed was not seen as reliable, and they just kind of wanted to not encourage that. There's been some clarification that what we need for gateway inference extension is really, really basic. In that case, actually works reasonably well. So I think a revert is probably okay. Like maybe there's some guidance we can give instead of just disallowing entirely. Like this is not reliable in most cases, but in this one case, it's fine, kind of thing. Yeah, I'm not sure, but revert seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, a revert would help.
I am not an Envoy contributor, though, to be clear. I'm just
Fair enough. I mean, the reason I ask is because a revert would help us on the Istio side. If it was like as soon as it's cherry picked, we build from source, so we'd be able to pull that in pretty quickly. I checked. I'm confirming with release managers, but our timeline's actually a little bit worse than K-Gateways because Istio releases in 2 weeks.
Oh no!
And I just noticed. Oh, no. I don't know if we've switched or not because inference extension is still alpha in Istio. So that's probably how it was never, how it hasn't been caught yet. But yeah, I'm just trying to think what the biggest thing is for us because we've got a pretty tight timeline for the next release for Istio if we don't want to get behind.
Yeah.
Keith, I assume that the next release of Istio is going to include Envoy 135. Is that correct?
That is what we're scheduled to include. So 126, Istio 126 has Envoy 134. I haven't seen the release managers change the Envoy version, but they might have, or they might be getting ready to as they're cutting RCs. So I've sent a message to follow up with them to confirm if you're moving to Envoy 135.
Okay, Keith, and if you could circle back on the issue here that I created, put in the chat window, just letting us know. I actually linked to to this issue. So yeah, long story short, if you can, when you find that out, if you just comment on the issue so we know where this deal stands.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah.
Cool. Let's use Danian's issue he spun up as our source of truth for figuring out this coordination. We can spin up a meeting there, but we should post the details in that issue. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.